Thank you to the Auditor General and her team for a very detailed review of the waste management portfolio within the National Solid Waste Management Authority. The Ministry would like to use the opportunity to indicate a few areas to the committee. First of all, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, as you may be aware, is established under the National Solid Waste Management Act and is governed by a board of management which establishes the authority. In 2019, 2020, and the 2020-21 financial years, the authority received public bodies corporate governance awards in the areas of improvement and adherence to policies, corporate governance policies, procedures, and practices, and also, Mr. Chairman and members, for most improved public body. The Ministry acknowledges that over the years there have been some weaknesses with the NSWMA and continue to provide strategic support in respect of improvements to any weaknesses that may be affecting the entity. The Auditor General in our report highlighted the shortcomings in respect of the enabling legislation. Just to update the committee that in respect of the legislative framework, the NSWMA has drafted 4 regulations to provide the structures to establish the authority as a regulatory entity. These are the NSWM Public Cleanliness Amendment Regulation 2022, the NSWM Hazardous Waste Electronic Waste Regulations 2022, that also for disposal facilities and fixed penalties, both for 2022. In our update to you recently, we had indicated that this process is far advanced and that we are preparing further drafting instructions for the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel, just to indicate to you that those drafting instructions would have been completed and have been dispatched. In respect of the strategic framework, the Ministry is directly represented on the Board of Management of the NSWMA through a nominee by the Permanent Secretary as established by the law. The Ministry, over the period, engages with the Chairman and the Head of Entity on several occasions and will continue to do so on a quarterly basis. Just to note, Chairman and members, that the report had indicated greater strategic direction. Just to advise that over the years, the strategic direction that has been given to the NSWMA would have been by virtue of Cabinet decisions number 3016 and 3216, wherein the enterprise team was established with responsibilities for that team being through the DBJ. And that process has seen us engaging with the DBJ and the enterprise team on a regular basis, wherein reports are provided to us and also shared with the NSWMA, and to indicate also that the NSWMA is a member of that enterprise team. Also, Mr. Chairman and members, as the Auditor General had noted, the absence of a regulatory framework, just by extension to the regulations that we're looking on, that the enterprise team also, by virtue of looking on the organizational structure of the NSWMA, would be concerned with separating the regulatory versus the operational framework, and that process is also being advanced through shortlisting of consultants who will be looking at the NSWMA specifically for this process. So the two are running concurrently. Just to highlight that over the period, the NSWMA and the Ministry would have been engaged in strategically by virtue of us nominating a focal point to the enterprise team, and by also supporting the Secretariat in the activities that are to be implemented, making various Cabinet submissions as the case may arise to support the enterprise team and the NSWMA in the actions that they have deemed important, including the preparation of a comprehensive business case regarding solid waste management. communicating also cabinet decisions and requests of the enterprise team to the NSWMA. And if you're going by my overview that I had presented initially, you would see the number of cabinet decisions that would have been communicated, and also making representation to both the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service and the cabinet, as the case may be. The ministry also engages on a quarterly basis with the NSWMA in respect of its strategic plan and budgetary review process. And we propose to continue to do that and to strengthen that also by looking further at each indicator and how we can heighten the evaluation of these indicators. Mr. Chairman, just to also indicate that the report would have identified also the gaps in the waste management resources, and we would have noted also that there was a contention that between the producers of the waste and the collection, that there would have also been a gap in respect of the environmental friendly solutions, and also promoting at the local level for members or community members to know what to do. Just to say that the ministry would have started or commenced discussions in pursuing a partnership that we can roll out a national PR program jointly with the NSWMA. I trust I have covered all the respective areas and the key points raised, and to just note that for the last quarter of this year, that the ministry will embark on a follow-up audit of the NSWMA to make sure all the internal controls that were identified are addressed in moving forward. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you again, Madam Pierce. I firstly want to put on record that it's my high privilege to be afforded the opportunity to not only lead the agency at this time, but to come and speak to the Honorable House as it relates to what we are doing there. We welcome always the oversight of the Auditor General's Department. We believe that it can only make us better. It can only help us to, develop on what we are doing. The agency, the NSWMA, has suffered over the years from a warped policy perspective. And I say that publicly because when the Act came into being, the operational side of the NSWMA should be very temporary. And that has gone on for 20 years. So you're in a temporary, you get a temporary job for 20 years. And the treatment in terms of budgetary support over those 20 years reflect the fact that society has never taken solid waste management seriously. The money is required, for example, to do the sustained, robust public education program that will be required to change culture. You don't change culture with a little add here, a little add there, a little piecemeal thing here. All the EDs before me have tried with the 3 R's initiative. That's reduce, reuse, recycle. Lately, composting has been added to it. It has not worked in any whole-scale way because we are never able to sustain a campaign to educate our people as to better waste management habits. So you will have a pilot, and in the area that was piloted, you see some change for a while. But very soon, people go back to their old ways. We believe that the divestment of the NSWMA operational side can't happen sooner. It should happen long ago. We are eagerly awaiting the conclusion, therefore, of the work that is being done by the enterprise team, and that they can wrap it up and rid the NSWMA of the operations so that it can concentrate on the regulatory work for which I think it is better suited.
All right. You have given extensive opening remarks, and I have a couple of questions before I invite the members. Madam Pierce, in relation to the issue, and the ED alluded to it, the separation of the regulatory versus the operational role. You indicated that you are engaging or about to engage a consultant to do some work in that regard. Could you give me some specifics in terms of what time frame does the ministry have to engage somebody? What report is expected within when? And then what would be the next steps? Because the ED has indicated clearly that this is not a role that he views the agency as doing and should be doing. So where are we with that, and how quickly would we have a legal and regulatory framework in place to have that separation?
Thank you, Chairman. So just to note, for clarification also, this is one aspect of the work being undertaken through the enterprise team, and it would have, phase one of the assignment would have been completed in respect of the definition of the scope of work. And as at July 2022, the sponsoring entity, in this case the IDB, would have commenced a procurement of phase two as at July 2022. As we are at this point,
when
Chairman,
you say the procurement of a consultant to undertake
so
that,
they have already shortlisted, and they are at this point preparing the request for invite proposals for the shortlisted consultants to do the work.
what are the deliverables of that consultant who is to be engaged?
The specific details, I don't have that TRR here, but the end of it, at the end of it, we are expecting to see a solid waste management authority that has the requisite structure to support the implementation of the regulations and the laws as established.
And what's your indicative time frame that the consultant should conclude that work?
Okay, so the report received from the team through the DBJ is that for the structure itself, we're looking on a timeline of March 2023 to September 2023, and for negotiations to also be undertaken in respect of the shortlisting persons during that period. So we anticipate that by next year, Chairman, that document should be fully prepared and ready.
And then after that, I assume there would be some legal work that would have to be done.
Yes, Chairman, as well as the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service would have to be engaged in that. They recall that ministry being public services responsibility, would have to do a submission to include a cabinet submission to get the relevant approvals to implement.
Member Guy, on this point?
Chairman, on this point, Madam PS, is there, as you have indicated, there is also deficiencies in terms of the regulations that have been not promulgated for 22 years now, basically. Is there going to be a concurrence whilst you're getting that consultant in something that's practical? Is it because of the absence of these regulations, why, in terms of its ability to enforce certain aspects of its mandate, the NSWMA is unable to deal with like roadside garages? Because we see a lot of these being proliferating across the country, and it is a problem in terms of stopping them. Do we have the legal framework now to, one, to stop it, and secondly, to arrest the offenders or to prosecute the offenders? Because, I mean, quite frankly, you know, we see them all over the place. We see derelict vehicles parked on the roadside, and sometimes there's an effort on the part of the NSWA to remove them. And I mean, to be fair to the ED, I've called him on occasions about this. But the truth is that we have a significant number of these left on the roadside, which are impeding traffic, which are health hazards and safety hazards for the commuting public.
Thank you, Member Guy. The challenge that we do have with derelict vehicles is a national one. We do clear them from time to time, but what happens, we can't declare it a derelict on our own. So we have to serve a notice, and I think there's a 14-day period. They put the notice on the vehicle. Sometime by the time you get back there, the owner show up and say, no, it's not, they're using it, for, they're going to put wheels on it. So it's a complicated thing. But we do move them. Again, we are hampered in that regard with the absence of reliable crane trucks, which each region should have at least 2 or 3 functioning crane trucks. I don't think in the 4 regions now we probably have 2 of them which is functioning. So you can understand how difficult it is to navigate the entire island with 2 functioning crane trucks. If we hire crane trucks, our budget can't allow us to hire crane trucks. So part of what you're seeing is that we don't have the level of resource to do it with the level of efficiency and timeliness that would be required. But there's also other legal things that we have to navigate to.
Sir Edie, I want to come back to in your opening remarks, you spoke to the issue of culture change and the fact that you don't have the resources to sustain a public education campaign. The issue of composting is one that I took on personally at home, and I would say in the last year I probably reduced what I put out by 50% by using my kitchen waste. And I can't say that I'm doing it perfectly, but I have 2 drums and I bore a hole in them and I do all of that. But there are, I believe this is an area that is you can get some quick wins without needing a lot of money for public education. There are communities that I believe with the proper infrastructure, you go in with a team, you demonstrate how the process works, you provide the drums or the equipment, you have somebody, compost is something which is valuable, that can be sold and from which people can earn. So something like that I don't think requires a big PR budget to implement. And there are companies that use drums and no longer use them in their operations that possibly could be partnered with to provide that in certain communities. So I view that as something, and I certainly, if I'm being parochial as a MP, would be willing to identify communities that would be willing to do something like that.
Right. You're correct,
Chairman,
MP.
If I may, before the ED comes in, you don't need a drum. All you need is a hole in the ground, basically. You know, I mean, you're doing the fancy one, but I mean, in the rural areas, we dig a hole and then we put it and we lay it with the thing and then dig it up at the end of a specified period. So, I mean, in tandem with what the chairman is saying, ED, it doesn't take much in terms of PR budget to do that. The culture can be changed. Yes, you're tweaking and you're doing as you go along, but we're head not so tough.
You're both all right as it relates to composting. Where we have a little departure is in terms of the culture. We have gone into communities, and as recently as just a few months ago, we were in Hanover, where we identify a community, and happy to report that there are about 10 farmers there that participated in the program, a pilot project with recomposting, and they are using composting effectively now, and they are telling their neighbors about composting and getting people to, they have become trainers kind of. In the community. So yes, there is a win to be gained from composting because 67% of the garbage that we currently take to a disposal site is compostable. And so definitely, were we to get a shift in the culture where composting is concerned, it would be a huge game changer. But the argument for culture change must not be underestimated. It is difficult to get people. Once you go in, you get excitement. But when you leave, and then the resource to stay in, we don't have. So we can come in and we invite people. You would have seen us and heard where we ask communities, tell us, we will come. We have community relations officers that will come in, will show you how to do it. The member guy is correct that you don't even need to have a container if you're in the rural areas. But like you in the palatial urban area, Chairman, you would have to have drum. I understand. But we will come and we will show you. We will show you. But the truth is, Chairman, people don't do on their own even the simple things. You would be surprised that you put up a no dumping sign and people will dump at the foot of the no dumping sign. That's the cultural defect that I'm talking about. I'm talking about people driving on Knutsford Boulevard and toss KFC box through the window of the car when they finish eating. It is a cultural defect that will take some serious public education to penetrate it and to turn it, Chairman. It's not going to be easy, and it will not just the public education. It will require the kind of penalties when you're caught that will hurt. It will require enforcement boots on the ground, which is another topic that we can discuss based on our limited capacity there. It will require electronic surveillance too, because you can't have an enforcement man everywhere. Look at your public spaces. Look at all your town centers. We sweep them early in the morning. Those of us who drive around, you will see people in the deep hours of the morning sweeping. By 9 o'clock, it's as if it was never swept. That's the cultural defect I'm talking, Chairman. It's not easy. When it has seeped into the culture of the people, they don't see anything wrong. A high percentage of people don't see anything wrong with littering.
I would agree with you on that, but I don't want you to give up because of that. And
no, man.
I think there's a lot of scope, particularly I would say on the composting, which is not something which is expensive, which I think with public education and going into specific communities, we could reduce what is put out for collection. As you know, Edie, there's really a sore point across the entire island in terms of collection and the timeliness of collection. I would say on a weekly basis, I have to call one of your officers. And in fairness to your officers, they respond. And I want to say they respond when they're called. But really, I shouldn't, as a representative, have to call an officer every week to complain that a community hasn't gotten collection in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Now, you have said repeatedly you're waiting on trucks. And you're waiting, I think, on 50 additional trucks. But my question is, what is the issue with the private contractors that NSWMA has always worked with and engaged, who would supplement the fleet that you have and would be able to collect the additional garbage that your trucks can't pick up? And what we have heard is that they're not willing to work because you take too long to pay them. And they're not going to put out their trucks because they're not going to wait 6 weeks, 3 months to be paid. So they prefer not to work. And it's a sore point for every single MP. Can give you examples, the public complaints, and it's something that we need, apart from waiting on the trucks, we need some explanation on.
Chairman, we laud the support that we get from the public contractors. They have played a great role. We have not supplied or replenished the stock of the NSWMA at the rate that it should, and so we rely heavily on private truckers. With regards to payment issues, I can't say that we have a payment issue now. I'll be honest enough to say that there were times when things would have slowed a bit, but right now we don't have a payment issue. The trucks, though, Chair, they have to be serviced, and they are age trucks, most of them, as you can see. The trucks that you see come around are private and public trucks. And so downtime is a huge challenge for us. There is a new development since COVID, Chairman, where you need a particular part for a truck. And in former times, you could have just air freight that down within a week. Now, in 3 months, and you don't get that same part. So when a truck go down now, it is taking longer to bring it back up, depending on what it go down for. So there,
is that your trucks or the private ones?
Us, we have that problem, and I suspect that the private people will have the same problem because it's trucks, really. So it is a challenge. Much has been talked about the supply chain and what is happening in the supply chain and all that. But I think the bigger point you're making is that we are behind in too much communities. And for that, we are not happy. As a matter of fact, we are embarrassed at the service that we are providing right now because we should be doing far better for the taxpayer in terms of they don't want to hear about our challenges internally or budget issues. They don't want to hear about whether or not we did get choked next year or last year. And we should be doing a better job, Chairman. I accept that. I concede on that. We do have 50 trucks coming. The first batch of should be arriving in another 4 or 5 weeks. I can't tell you how anxious I am. I mean, I just can't wait. I want to go down the wharf and stay down there till the truck come because it's really a really tough time for us. But until we get those trucks in the system, we will continue to have some challenges. We intend, though, to hit the ground running. We are training drivers. We have a special relationship workout with the traffic authority to ensure that we can expedite those drivers that have application in, to ensure that we can put the trucks the moment we get them off the wharf, they'll be in your community. And we have a good operation that we're planning to give Jamaica a proper cleanup as a way of saying to them, thanks for your patience. But we intend to really push hard to, as soon as those trucks arrive. Just to say that there is another 50 that is on schedule, and I'm using this opportunity because the public would have heard about 100 trucks, and then they start hearing about 50. So I'm clarifying that it's 50 in this 22-23 cycle, and it's 50 in the 23-24 cycle also.
Before member siblings, can you tell me how many trucks you have in your fleet owned by NSWMA, and what percentage of those are roadworthy and operational versus those that are down, and the relationship between NSWMA trucks and the private contractors? Is it like a 50-50, or is it 80% NSWMA, 20% private? I just want to have an idea.
Probably it's more 50-50. I would think we have about 94 trucks now that are in the fleet. And I note your question, Chairman, that you want to know about what's roadworthy. Now, by a miracle, and we get all the parts that we need today, all that 94 could be on the road. The truth is, there is a high percentage that's off the road now because of the problem that I told you earlier. When the
what percentage of the 94?
When the other team was in, it was somewhere in the region of 68% that was down. It is unfortunate.
Just hold on. 68% of the 94 trucks were down?
Right, at the time. Why?
So that is pretty much, so you really only have 30 operational trucks?
At that time. And I know you didn't want me to run past it because you want to drill on it a little, Chairman, but I wanted to run past it because that's not a static number. It's not a fixed number. It's fluctuating. So if you were to check me 2 days after that report, you probably will find that it's down to 50%. Then if you another 5 days, you're probably down to 48% because we keep fixing, we keep servicing. Now, once we pull a truck, even for servicing, for general servicing, we can't call that a truck that is out operational. Once
but help me know, as of today, of the 94 trucks that you have, how many are operational on the road collecting garbage?
Today, I don't have today's numbers, but before you're through here, I'm going to let them send that to me because I don't want to give you a number and then you check it and say that I misled you. This is the Honorable House, but I'll get that for you in a few.
All right. Member Siblings.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. ED, I am going to move a little bit ahead while you are down at the wharf, waiting until those trucks come. What I want you to tell the people of Clarendon Northern, for me, is what is your, I heard you, before I go there, I heard you over the radio talking, and I heard you just now talking about blessing the people in December, in the Christmas season to help them when the truck comes. But what I'm interested in is beyond that. What is the operational plan you have for rural constituency? We would love to, we really love to understand that within your resources, the 50 new trucks, what you had planned to restate and put back on the road, those trucks that you're waiting for parts for 3-6 months, how many of them is practically going to be back in the fleet? We want to know the worst case scenario, because the best case scenario seemed to me a pie in the sky. So can we get the worst case scenario of an operational plan for rural communities? Of course, I know the urban communities would want to know the plan for them, but I think they are much better off than the rural communities.
Member Siblings, I'm very happy that you put on the table the challenge that we have in rural Jamaica. For example, when I collect the garbage in Kellits, I have to take that garbage all the way down that hill, wind it all the way through into Mandeville. So if anybody understands the geography, I hope the other general know those areas. If you leave Kellits, it's quite a work to carry the garbage. About 2 hours to get me to Martin's Hill disposal site in Mandeville, right? So we have a challenge in the way our disposal sites are distributed across the island. When I collect from Member Wilson in Negril or in Sav or wherever, I have to carry that garbage all the way to retirement in Montego in St. James. When you throw into the equation the shortage of trucks, and you have one truck tie up for 2 hours transporting a garbage, factor also the 2 hours that it takes to drive around and pick up said garbage. You understand that an 8-hour shift, I only use that truck to do 1 trip of garbage. Which is why this enterprise team and the work it's doing is so important, because the concept that is being drawn up have little transfer stations at several of them across the island, which would see trucks moving in and out of communities quicker than they were able to do now, because they are going a shorter distance to dispose of the garbage. That should have been a feature of the NSWMA long ago. We should not have a situation where I'm loading a truck in Rocky Point to carry the garbage all the way to Mandeville. But that's our reality, and it poses a huge challenge for rural folks like those in your Kellits and in the other areas of Jamaica. So you asked about an operational plan. We have without giving too much, we already worked out that we will set up a task force of units that will be charged to support the regions. I don't want to say too much because we're still working on it. But it is a good plan, even in the embryonic year. It is looking like a very good plan. And that task force will, I believe, strategically deployed, will make a huge difference. But you are in a bind because geographically it's very challenging to get the truck into you, to load it and to take it back out to that far distance.
All right, Member Holness on the Zoom. I'm acknowledging you.
Thanks, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I will continue on Mr. Sibley's question, and mine is actually complex as an MP because I also have the urban Bull Bay area where garbage is collected only on the main road. And so no garbage is collected in our tributaries. Now, Edie, I am wondering, and I'm not sure at what stage you are in terms of development of the plans, if they have done a full gap analysis in terms of what is required for us based on our current garbage level, what is the resources required to be able to have that pie in the sky, one, and two, with the move being made to revolutionize the waste management system going forward, are we at a place with the amendments to what we currently do or what currently pertains that we can say with some certainty, yes, when we go down this pathway, we are going to be in an excellent position in terms of garbage collection and waste management?
Member Holness, the enterprise team has done extensive work looking at the entire country, and they have done the garbage characterization study, and they have analyzed the history, all the work we have given them, reading the documents, and they looked at everything has to do with the challenges of solid waste in Jamaica. I'm sure that whatever comes out of the enterprise team, as a member, I have to regard it. I can be giving the report, and that's not yet final. But I'm sure that what will come out will be far superior to what obtains now. I say, though, that were we to get the kind of cooperation, the kind of buy-in from the public as it relates to composting in rural areas like Mavis Bank, areas like Hall's Delight, areas like Maryland, areas like, I'm talking about Member Holness's area. All were we to get the support to compost for composting, and yes, separation of the plastic bottles and so on, because those, if you move them in one direction, we have a partnership with Recycling Partners of Jamaica that could take the plastic out of the waste stream. And we are doing that in 30-odd communities in Kingston. It's reaping huge dividends. Norman, you should allow me. And we have 6 rural communities in the SPM belt, which is Manchester, Clarendon, and St. Elizabeth. And we have 6 in the WPM belt also, and 6 in the NEPM belt. So it's not a Kingston project. It's not a Kingston project. However, the composting aspect of our waste management strategy, if we were able to get that going in the rural areas, we would have cut in half the garbage problem that a Member Holness have, that a Member Sibley's have.
All right, Member Guy, then Member Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm glad you gave me the go-ahead no, because I want to...
Member Guy, just a small follow-up on the cost of getting the support from solid waste to do this program. So if a member of parliament is willing to, in the rural spaces, work on a compost program and manage that process, and in the urban areas do the plastic bottle and garbage separation, is there any support? What type of support will be given by NSWME?
All the technical support you need, we will come to the meetings, we'll address them, we'll provide the pamphlets, we will be following up with them to make sure that we don't just come in and talk and leave. We'll follow up with them to make sure that they are doing it properly. Once we have a structured arrangement, because we have limited staff, we are very capable, are good at it. We have demonstrated that time and time again, and we are willing.
Thanks, Edie. I will put my hand up as one who would want you to work with East Rural St. Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Edie, on page 11 of this prompt here, I don't know if you have it, but it speaks to, and I'm supporting a point you made earlier, but I think a balance has to be there in terms of, and I'm going back to the budget for the public relations as it relates to composting.
Page 11.
Your mention of the 2 hours it takes from Kelly's to take it to the site in Manchester.
Right.
Now, this study reveals that an average of 94.6% of the residential waste collected was recyclable and could be diverted from waste disposal sites. Yes, we are in a cash bind, but has there been any studies done to see whether the savings that could be effected from having that long transportation for, say, 8 tons of garbage and collecting only 2 tons or 1 ton, because if 98% is probably about 500 kilograms, then you would serve more communities with that single truck. And secondly, you would be able to spend some of that money on the public relations to get more people to recycle and to compost. I mean, an analysis of what could be achieved then. And the second part of it is that you didn't answer the member's question, which I am concerned about as well, as it relates to the complaint by the private operators that it takes 6 weeks to pay and them not do it and so. Are you facing that particular problem in terms of, you said that money is not the problem right now, I know you said that, but are you facing that particular concern from the private operators that we're not getting to bed with Ssptember because we're not getting the money on time and the rates at which they're paying?
There are, I did answer that we do not have a payment problem currently, and that I also did concede that there were times when we were slow in pay. So I did answer that. However, I can expand the answer to tell you that there's ongoing discussions with the contractors about rates. They're always, we're never able to pay enough. Even we just moved the rate by 40%, was it? 40%. And no sooner than we move the rate by 40%, there's another discussion going on right now that that's not sufficient. So it's difficult. And you know, as government, we operate in budget. We can't just move rates and that. So, but it is a challenge, but it's an ongoing one. It's not something that I would say would have caused a shutting down or a slowing down of the operation.
One add-on, skips. In some communities, the residents are prepared to take their garbage from in front of the house and put in a community skip, garbage collecting area. Even them, they too. The reality, however, is that NSWA rarely provides these. Secondly, we have communities that build concrete skips that your team comes and collect on a untimely basis, be that as it may, however. But what is your position on provision of skips, NSWA providing skips for certain communities? I mean, in the past, prior to your enthronement as ED, we had a situation where the NSWA was asking, like members of parliament, to partner with them to do that. And at one stage, the partnership ended and you had to be on your own in providing the skips for the community. Is there a new thrust in respect of this happening?
Were we to have the budgetary allocation for that, but in the current reality, we can't provide skips. We encourage, though, councillors, member of parliament, to see, how they can, assist in that regard, and just let us know so we can kind of guide them as to where to put the skip, where not to put it, because trucks would have to be able to access it. And also, we try to dissuade people from putting them on main roads, because when you put it on main road, the community don't get the use of the skip. All the motorists passing by, before you know it, you create a dump there, and it's not the community people naturally that use it. So.
All right, Member Clark, then Member Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just, for the record, say that St. James Central has a very good working relationship with NSWMA. Considering the fact that we are 77% informal, most of the residents living on the embankment of the North Gully. And so we have to make sure that the relationship is all the while close to 100%, or else the dump is going to get into the gully, into the sea. And so we work very closely. My question now, Mr. ED, how many crane trucks are in the fleet that you're speaking of, that you wish that you could put up a bed at the wharf for?
This is one of the uncomfortable reality. Originally we had 4 crane trucks, 1 per region. Now I think 2 is functioning. 2 is functioning now. So
Sorry. I'm speaking of the new set of trucks that are coming in.
Sorry, I didn't get it like that. Sorry, none is in it. But
Mr. Chairman, we're having problems as it is already.
Right.
And I am a lot concerned that in the new amount of vehicles that you are to get.
In the 50. None is in the 50, because the truth is, the collection.
So what about the rest that is to come?
That one we will be putting in tippers in that, because we need tipper trucks for bulky waste, and we need crane trucks also. But right now, our immediate challenge, the real challenge that we have now that is really embarrassing us, is the compactor. We need compactors right now. We need it.
Next thing, I heard you mention, and you gave statement to Kellits going out, traveling all the way to Manchester or Westmoreland to retirement in St. James. Some time ago, I would have heard on the news of solid waste doing what they call a compacting station or something.
Transfer station.
Sorry? Transfer station.
Right.
What about that? Where is that with us?
Okay, so you will know about an entity called PIMSEC or PINSEC or PIMC and PIMSEC. That's in the Ministry of Finance. And every government project have to be cleared there before. So PIMSEC would have a ton of documentation on the transfer station that they're processing. I know that we have a consultant that we had engaged. And
Sir ED, you said John Public?
Yeah.
John Public is very busy, you know.
Yeah.
They are very busy. They don't have no time to listen to us talking about PIMSEC or PIMTEC, who has a ton of documentation to process. What John Public want is action right now. So the whole fact, it has been at least 8 years or so that we have been hearing about the transfer station.
No, it's more than that, member. The talk of transfer station is as old as I am hearing about solid waste management. There's one supposed to be built in Westmoreland that I understand.
So you realize that if solid waste had gotten one up and ready, running in Westmoreland,
right,
that movement, that 2 hours
would have assisted greatly, sir.
So what is really holding back the situation? That's what I want.
So the one that we pursued is pursuing in Trelawney. That's the one that I spoke about just now with PIMSEC. I know the public is very impatient with the long bureaucracy and the process, but I am in this house today because of an Auditor General's report. So I have no option but to be a creature of process. I have to follow the process, or the nice team over here will have a field day, and the public will be interested in that.
It's not that we are not living and holding each other to the process.
Yeah.
What we want to know, why is it that the process is taking so long? This is the argument. Why is it taking so long?
Yeah. Well, it's a process, and sometimes when you think you've cleared a hurdle, there are new requirements that you have, tasked to find, to satisfy.
So in terms of the percent as to where the process is at, could you give us a time frame, a percent, 70% complete, 80%, where are we?
You see, the PIMSEC part of the conversation is just one small part. One small part. Will also become a funding part. So when you ask me to give time frame, that's almost impossible as a public servant, because even after the project is cleared, then budgetary space have to be found for it. Isn't it so? Good. So,
Mr. Edie, sorry to say, Montego Bay, the friendly city, is also the tourism, the Mecca tourism destination.
Right.
I would want you to visit Montego Bay one of those days when the rain would have just fallen, and look out, stay on the hill, and look out in the bay. And then you would understand why is it that we need to speed up the process as it relates to how we're going to deal with the collection of garbage. For days, Mr. Edie, when it rains and all that comes down into the bay, Pier 1, that entire bay, Montego Bay, nobody can go to the beach for the next 4 or 5 days.
Very bad.
And we cannot continue to work in this way, because guess what? The monies that NSWMA needs badly to do what they need to do comes from tourism just the same. And so we have to protect what we have.
I agree with you 100%, Member Clark. Just to say that you have led me now to speak to containerization of garbage. There is no reason why so much garbage should end up in any of our shoreline. It is because of a bad practice, a bad habit that we have where we don't containerize our garbage properly. And when we do containerize it, there are people who have stray dogs, stray cats, stray pig, everything that disturb the garbage. So we need to, as a people, decide what kind of shoreline we want, what kind of tourism product we want, because everybody have to have their hands on this deck. We can't provide enough trucks to stop garbage from being thrown in the gully if people decide to. So there is a role of personal responsibility, and we have to challenge our people. Stop damaging the tourism product by wantonly discarding waste instead of just investing in garbage bags, which, by the way, is not on the ban list. Garbage bags are not banned, and they are not too expensive either when you look at the benefits that come from properly containerized garbage, what it does to the aesthetic, the health benefits, etc. So Member Clark, I just want to ask you and other members, when we speak to our constituents, to encourage them to properly containerize their garbage, because the truth is, sometimes, steep into this culture that I've spoken about earlier, they don't see a problem dropping a plastic bottle when they finish the water. They just drop it, because somehow that everybody is doing. But that same bottle is what end up on the shoreline and destroy the marine life.
So, Mr. Edie, you have answered partially part of the question, but right here on my notes is the next step where I wrote it down to speak about the culture of our people today. But this is where we need to partner, both your entity and the representative, and to bring in the people that we seek to serve. I notice we don't see much advertisement from NSWMA in the sense of how to go about doing these things. Yes, I practice the whole separation of garbage, because I have a box in the kitchen that does the plastic, and you have the other garbage. But what we need to do, where is JIS in this whole matter? Where is the social media program that is run by your agency? So many persons log on to social media each day. We need to use them. I mean, if you keep hearing something over and over, then one day you're going to start to believe in it. So we need to go down that road.
Thanks, Member Clark. We do. Can we do more? Absolutely. But we do have a presence on social media. I'm sure you would know in WPM our Sharon Williams and the work she's doing there for us. And so we have a presence on social media. Can we do more? Absolutely. Also, in terms of, you spoke about partnership, we are big on that. We want partnership because we have long concluded that no one entity can't resolve this cultural defect. It will take all hands on deck. Chairman, if you allow me just to say, the final submission is to be, while we've been working with PIMSEC, there's a final submission that is to be done to PIMSEC. My team have just asked me to ensure that the correct information is posited. A final submission is to be made to them. What is holding up that final submission for the transfer station is an environmental impact assessment where we're trying to put together $25 million to do that study and things. So things are not as easy. So you're doing things, but along the way, the process asks for certain things. Here it asks for an environmental impact assessment, and that is outstanding. So we're working to do that to go down. Also, on the question of increase to contractors, I did say 40%. It is between 20 and 40. So it's not all the contractors got 40%. Depending on where you work and the terrain, etc., you have the distance, you have the different things that we factor in. So it's between 20 and 40%. 40 on the high end.
All right. Member Guy has a follow-up, then Member Wilson, then Member Miller.
Edie, I just want to comment on something you said earlier, and I take umbrage to it. I think it's unfair to make the comment, whereas I agree with you about the culture change. It's unfair to say that more trucks will not prevent people from dumping garbage in the gully. The truth is that this has always happened, but we have seen an exponential rise of this as a consequence of the lack of trucks to collect the garbage. So whereas it might be that you won't prevent them from absolutely dumping in the gully, I think the comment is unfair to the general public out there to say that more trucks will not prevent people from dumping garbage in the gullies. And I'm a little offended by that, you know? I don't have a gully to dump it in, but the trucks collect mine. But the solution, yes, is a change in the culture. Yes, is trying to encourage more people to have separation and composting. And thirdly, which is the elephant right now, is more trucks to collect the garbage.
We need more trucks. And just to say to you, the point, when I made the point about more trucks, that no amount of trucks won't stop a person who wants to dump in the gully, it's a fact. There are people right now who, even with the shortage that we have, they properly containerize their garbage. And I'm talking about people in all strata. They properly containerize their garbage. They double the bag. They separate their plastic. As in Balaclava, a lady came up to me and she carried me to the back of her house and showed me where she have a whole heap of plastic bottles that's a pack. And I put her on to recycling partners. So there are people on every level who are trying to do. But some people quickly make an excuse. Oh, the truck no come, so I have to dump it in the gully. I rubbish that.
I like the term you use, rubbish. You rubbish it. All right, Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome Mr. Gordon and his team. So, Mr. Gordon, I have a few questions, and it's stemming out of my constituency, Westmoreland Western, which we do have a major issue going on. I do, and I'm aware that there is a collection schedule that occurs. However, in areas such as in Negril or in Little London, for those who are in those communities listening, they will know that we have some major challenges, particularly around bulk waste and domestic waste. You know, as MPs, you would have known that the government gives us some allocation for bulk waste removal. And at no given point are we able to move all the bulk waste. I find it interesting, and it's somewhat a phenomenon. I will go into one street, and the truck is full. One street. And we're talking about fridge, stove, washing machine, and the list goes on and on. Old toilet, face basin. And these bulk waste poses huge challenges because what I see emerging is that the bulk waste is being mixed with the domestic waste. So at the sites where you would have a skip, people just come and leave them fridge. And that is exacerbated when we put in the commercial aspect of it. And I wanted to touch on that a bit because I find that with garbage collection, especially in the resort town of Negril, you will find a lot of the major businesses, they produce a lot of garbage. And the arrangement that they would have with private contractors, sometimes it doesn't reach the dump. And that is the reality. I've seen where I have to be moving garbage where businesses would have paid a contractor to move the garbage to the official site in retirement. So there is a major bulk waste challenge in my constituency, and particularly because of the booming commercial sector. And it continues, and when it rains, you will find that when it rains heavy, like how we unfortunately we missed the hurricane, but when you have heavy downpours, the water will basically carry the garbage downstream, and wherever it ends, and most times it's in the sea. So I find that I have a lot of coastal cleanups, and it poses a significant challenge. So I wanted to know, in terms of the commercial area, this is one of the questions I have. Do you have arrangements with businesses? Because I'm of the belief that NSWMA, as the official entity for garbage collection, should have contract with every working entity, or there should be some allocation within the structure of government that feeds directly from these entities, probably a small levy that helps fund NSWMA towards collecting their bulk waste. So if there isn't a private arrangement, there should be some form of arrangement where businesses will, especially those that produce a lot of commercial garbage, because we find that the private arrangement doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it's the MP that gets blamed when the garbage isn't collected. It's not NSWMA. I'm telling you that. I have endless amount of calls. So I wanted to know if there is a particular arrangement with NSWMA from a policy standpoint, because I'm new, I'm a new MP, so I wouldn't know all the intricacies of the arrangement.
All right. So thank you, Member Wilson. The NSWMA has a commercial arm that does engage businesses where garbage for profit is removed for a cost to them. And a lot of businesses have signed up for that. But there's far too much that has refused to sign up with us. The truth is, they don't have to sign up with us in the current arrangement. They can get any registered hauler, waste hauler, and they can make that arrangement privately. What we are seeing, though, is around the town centers, a lot of businesses, they use that little demented guy with a cart, little
donkey cart. Right. In my case, we have a donkey cart man that does the collection.
Right. And that has created an unsightly mess around our town centers. That's what you are seeing. We should have had the regulations that we are talking about for 20 years long ago, because it would have given us the muscle to go in and enforce the private people, right, to get them to regularize their waste collection. And we don't have that right now. We're hoping against hope that maybe we don't even get it, because the thing might be divested before. I hope it is divested before. But that part of our challenge is the absence of the regulation in that regard. But yes, you're correct that the commercial garbage do pose a problem. With regards to bulky waste, I am too, sir, flabbergasted. I don't know where we get so much rubbish. I mean, you can go in to do bulky waste cleanup, and midway in the operation, you have to stop because you just can't afford it. And if the Ministry of Health sometimes engage us to help with their dengue cleanup program. Every year, we go out with the same communities and we find the same amount of old fridge, old tire. It's like it is manufactured overnight. Like, I don't know. But But the truth is, we have a challenge in that regard. One of the things that we have decided is to have, we will have to get budgetary support for it, a structured bulky waste program to buttress the regular public cleansing program that we have, where we probably, on a quarterly basis, do a big bulky waste cleanup and so on. We do it at Christmas time, and sometime around Labor Day, we do something, but it's inadequate. We just can't keep up with the amount of bulky waste that people generate. You see, we are a high consumer society. Member guy facetiously said that just now, but we buy a lot. We spend. We just spend and factual, right? But it is a problem, and it's something that we are intending to fix or attempt to fix with a quarterly bulky waste cleanup program. Once we can get the budgetary support.
So I welcome that. CEO. And you touching.
Remember, I say once we get the budgetary support.
Once we get the money. Remember, I'm not in the Ministry of Finance. You know? But going on to another point that you made mention of, which is the type of garbage. And you did mention separation, but we have been talking about this for quite some time. And I'm not certain where the glitches are, because we do have plastic. You know, the Senator Mate Samuda did a fantastic job with that. But we have other form of waste. We have e-waste. And we have, you know, those fridges, those old appliances. And we are still seeing where they are treated as just one set of waste. We are still not separating. And I'm wondering, from your standpoint, how difficult would it be then for NSWMA to designate whether one particular site to e-waste? So you know that once it is e-waste, it goes to this particular site. It may cost a bit more, but in the long run, it will be significantly cheaper than trying to do garbage separation when you put everything in one location. So is there any move towards a separating site or locations that are designated for specific waste?
At the risk of sounding like you're on the executive of the NSWMA, sir.
No, I'm not.
I will tell you
for
that,
the record, I'm not.
I will tell you that we have just purchased a truck, a box body truck, primarily for our e-waste program. Notwithstanding the absence of the regulation which we anticipate, we already have permit for one site in Jamaica where we can store e-waste temporarily, which is the Riverton. So we have to ask now all our stations across the island.
What about Western Jamaica?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, we ask our stations across the island, all our regional offices and our facilities to make room there to accommodate e-waste, and we ask people to take them to us, and we will then send our box, our truck for them to take them in, because we have to abide by the permit. We can only keep it at one facility for now.
So you're saying you have designated areas within a particular site for that? Sure.
We even looking at an additional permit for a property in Hill Run that we have leased and have started retrofitting for exclusively for e-waste. But we have to get a permit for that site first, so we still have to use the Riverton permit. But the answer to your question, the short answer is yes, we do take e-waste separately, and we have encouraged, we probably need to do more push on that in the terms of the public education, but we are encouraging people to bring their e-waste to our facilities island-wide. We will then send our truck for it and take it into Kingston.
And I'll follow up to that, because e-waste is big business as well. And while we have focused our conversations around the costs and the requirement for more capital, the fact is that with some level of creativity and innovation, NSWMA can be a profit-making entity. And e-waste is one of those avenues, because we see we're recycling of specific parts in these e-waste materials.
Which is why earlier I said temporarily, store it temporarily, because we are currently pursuing international market for the e-waste. There are local people who are in the export of e-waste, and they have contacted us too, and we are looking on our own to some markets overseas, because you're correct. There is a market. There are markets for it.
Yeah, correct. And so since you have been exploring this, which I'm happy to hear, do you have an estimated value of what our export potential is for e-waste?
Difficult because we are new at the whole national collection of e-waste. We are kind of new at that. We want to see what's coming in first, because when you go out with this, you may very well find that you have a lot that, that's in the first instance, but as you know, because these things, a member guy spoke, you buy them, they have to, have a little lag time there before they become waste. So it was difficult to give, especially in a parliament. Maybe anecdotally you could say something, but I wouldn't want to do that here.
Oh, all right, thank you. And then I move back to the issue of plastics, because in my constituency in particular, we do have, persons do practice separation of garbage. So we do have the plastics being put to one side. But is there any ticketing system that currently exists for people who do not separate?
Regulations would have to guide that. The regular ticketing system that we have is under the anti-litter law, which I don't want to tell you the fines here because it's so embarrassing.
So you're saying the fines need to be updated, but there is a ticketing system?
Yes, and we do serve tickets now for under the Anti-Litter Act, some 300-400 up to 500 tickets per month. We do right currently.
But because
I want to know, what is the fine right now? No, I want to know. I think it's important.
You have fines as low as $10,000, $2,000, $2,000, $10,000 fines. Fines that people laugh at you when you write a ticket, give them the taking it and laughing.
But let me ask you, have you made a submission through your parent? How come in? I know, but have you made a submission through the parent ministry for those fines to be increased?
And we have been, and you would have, I'm sure that you would have heard a lot about the regulations that are there. One of them is the fixed penalty regulations 2022, which is, so there is not just talk, but actual work that's being done, Chairman, to significantly increase those fines. The fines can be a deterrent, And even with the whole dumping in the gully thing, if you were to make an example of a couple of people and they paid when it is publicized what it cost them to do it, we would see some movement in the right direction. But we have to wait on the regulations, and we have to wait until we get the fines.
Finished, Chair? Okay. So the reason why I came up with the fines, because I'm not sure who would administer these tickets. That's one, and I'm not sure what will happen if these persons don't pay the fines. It's not just saying you give them a 10,000 or a 50,000 ticket. So in my head, I'm still not clear whether it's a parish council will do these fines, they will have inspectors that goes around, or is it that the NSWMA, upon collection of these garbage / bulk waste, would they be issuing these fines to these homeowners? Because I've found where even in lots that people have, persons will just come and dump on that particular lot, right? And recently, I can share my example, is that I went to a site, and our estimate was that it was 2 truckloads. We end up moving 10 from that site.
Yes.
When we got the buckle to go in, it ended up being 10,
yes.
Right? It was totally shocking to see all of that just unfold. But just 2 or 3 weeks later, it's back to the state that it was. And that is why I say, we need to implement these fines for persons, because then it becomes somewhat of a deterrent. And then, is it the police that issue these fines? No. Because NSWMA, I would assume, don't have the capacity to implement these things.
We do have an enforcement unit, sir. It's woefully inadequate, as I said earlier, but we still write tickets. And up to 500 some months. With regards to the illegal dump that you would have discovered. That's always our experience, that you thought on the glance that is probably 2 or 3 loads over there. By the time you get in, you realize that you're moving out 20 loads out of the thing. And so it's just a difficult arrangement right now, and that's why I cannot leave the conversation without some amount of personal responsibility. We have to get the public to play their part.
Yes, and the last, and I agree with you, I'm in total support. The last question I have on recycling is as it relates to paper. Most of our conversations doesn't meander into paper. I'm not sure because of the type of material, but I've seen where offices produce a lot of paper, and we have books and old directories, all consuming millions of metric tons of garbage, which is totally recyclable. Is there a program around paper? Paper recycling, paper collection, because even this house, the very house that we sit in, produces a lot of paper and waste that can be recycled.
All right, so your question is tied up in, again, the complex nature of solid waste management and the different things that have to come together for it to be efficient, for it to be effective. The recycling aspect is one where we have, as a country, failed miserably on that one. And society have to ratify some things, If we really want to have proper solid waste management, the requisite investment have to be made in the recycling plants that is required. We can nitpick and talk about a little paper here, that there. But where is the recycling plant that we have access to? We can't, from our budget, set up that, you see. So there are some things which are just bigger than us. We have to just work with our current reality.
Yeah. And as it pertains now to the tourist capital, yes, I have a few more. As it pertains to the tourist capital of Negril, the tourist capital of Negril, right, that is correct. The capital of Casual, to be exact. We have, that is our outward facing face, put it that way. That's where tourists come and interact in the space, to get a taste and a slice of Jamaica. We have had some serious challenges recently with the collection of garbage, albeit I can say you guys have improved over the past couple of weeks. However, I do find that the waste in these commercial districts now, that this is just walk foot traffic, people just come to the space to work, is enormous. And I'm wondering, is there any scope for there to be a designated truck for Negril? Because what we find is a truck that goes into Negril, it will go up into other communities, Mount Airy, West End, out into Sheffield, but there's no designated truck for Negril. So is there a schedule that is designed specifically for our tourist resort area? Because I hear my member colleague mention his area in Montego Bay, but I'm wondering if it's something that is structured within the NSWMA, or you just treat it as an overall part and parcel of garbage collection.
The Tourism Enhancement Fund, I think, is an excellent entity that such a matter could be discussed with. But I couldn't sit in the public accounts committee to commit a truck for a district of Negril, important though it is, because while you emphasize the importance of Negril to tourism, I'm sure that Falmouth could make that claim, Ochorias could make that claim, the people in Trenchtown could make that claim.
Road. The member said Back Road could make the claim too.
St. Thomas, can I say St. Thomas, please?
Well, when I say that, I'm using the data that is produced. So we contribute a third of tourist income to the country.
Which is why I direct you to the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Right, a third. So I'm not sure not saying anything about any other area, but we do contribute the largest portion towards tourist income. But I do get your point, and I've spoken to the minister as well, and he did share his concerns about garbage and possibly looking at some designation. But it's a conversation that we need to have, as you said, and I am definitely one who will be looking forward to that particular discussion. And the last question I have surrounds schools. I've gotten a lot of calls from our schools. I know the Minister of Education, she had indicated that there was a massive cleanup to the opening of school, and that was spectacular. You know, we didn't have any challenges, but as the students start to populate the schools, you find that the garbage starts to accumulate. So I've been seeing where some of the schools are having some challenges recently, and they do call their MP, right? Because number is widely accessible. So is there another initiation or another project that's being designed around schools to support just taking off? Because we know that there are some challenges internally, but just to identify and to also signal to our future generation that we are serious about garbage and they should separate and we will pick it up.
Right. So we have a school program that we are working on to go in, and we're going from, we want to bring it in. It's kind of interactive. It has, you know, everything is about the gadget now. So we want it's electronic in many regards, so it can play it on a computer, on your cell phones. And we want to go into the schools. We're trying to put the funding together for that. We want to go into the schools, and we want to go into not just the high schools. We want to go from, if budget allows, we would want to go from the early childhood. Because if we bend the tree from the young, we used to sing bits of paper lying on the ground, and we used to pick the paper up with pride. We never used to litter when we were going to school. I'm sure when you're a young man, you probably don't know that song. But we used to take pride in cleaning up our spaces. In a way, Dr. Guy will support me on this. It is a decline. It is a real retrograde step when we have school compound littered from one corner to the other. No, because that never used to happen.
All right, Member Miller, and then Member Charles online.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Thanks for coming to the PAC ED, and thanks for what you have said. I realize also that there's an issue in Jamaica, and I support the cause for a public campaign moving forward, and anything that we can do to ensure that that moves forward. It's a must, because telling persons is one thing, but actual doing it, and then people tend to do it for a while and then lapse after a while. I realize even in this storm, the rain that is upon us, I realize that the amount of garbage that is on the road and the plastic, which is a serious issue. What I didn't get from one of the questions that my colleague asked, that I wanted to ask as well. Say, for example, my colleague Moreland litters Negril, and my colleague Moreland litters Negril, and Guy litters Port Maria, and is caught and given a ticket, right? How do you ensure that these persons pay the fine? And if they don't pay the fine, what will transpire from that?
Right. So one of our lawyers from the ministry, Gabriel Wilkes, would answer that, and some other things that you want to speak to in terms of regulation, which will help in your answer.
And I have some more questions, Sir Chair. Active.
Good morning. So presently, under the National Solid Waste Management Act, there is a provision that when certain offenses are committed, you have the option of issuing what is called a notice in writing, which is a ticket, which offers the discharge of any liability to conviction. So the thinking is, when you are issued the ticket, it would operate similar to how tickets under the Road Traffic Act presently operates. You're given a period, which is 21 days on the date of the notice, to pay that money to the authority. And the Act says that the persons who can issue those tickets, a question was raised earlier, is an authorized officer. An authorized officer includes a person designated as such by the NSWME, but it also includes a public health officer, a member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, an inspector, persons under an authorized officer under the National Resources Conservation Regulations, etc. I'm not sure if I've answered the question.
Okay, so if these persons, all right, so you say it operates similar to that of the road traffic, right?
Right. So if you don't pay within the 21 days, you are liable before the court, summary conviction before the court. So the ticket literally is like a road traffic. So the road traffic ticket that you're familiar with, it would have that indication, which court you'd have to attend if you don't pay the money, the date that you have to pay the money, of course, the fine.
All right, so ED mentioned some persons traveling through Knoxford Boulevard, just trash KFC outside. So you'll give them a ticket, right? You don't know. So the Road Traffic Act, you will not get an opportunity to renew your driver's license if you did not pay the fine. How do you track down that person in a situation similar to that? How do you ensure compliance in terms of paying the fine? And if the fine is not paid, what will be done?
If the fine is not paid, the thinking is, if the fine is not paid, or I believe this is how it operates now, but if the fine is not paid, a summons would be sent to the court that has been stipulated on the ticket. So they would be aware that as at whatever date, the person, well, I'm just speaking off of what happens with the Road Traffic Act, so I can't speak definitively of the process, but that is how it's supposed to operate.
Sir Chair, can we get some information on that, because that is very important in terms of
I'm very interested, Member Miller, because the way the Road Traffic Act is not effective. I mean, you see examples of taximen with 700 tickets and them still driving and no license. So if you don't have it, the committee would definitely be interested in finding out exactly how that process would work.
All right, Sir ED, through the chair, I've seen as well where, so we're waiting on that answer, Sir Chair, to come back to us. So I've seen where in the constituency that I represent, Southeast St. Catherine, I know many persons fight for the rural area, but the urban area is just important as well, in terms of it's a large dormitory community. It's a large dormitory community, and I speak for the entire Portmore. I've seen where the collection of waste is not distributed evenly, which I've spoken to you about, and I must say that the collection has improved. And as my colleague Wilson will state, that majority of people will call you about their collection. I'm making an appeal that whenever we receive those 50 trucks, that some will be dispatched, especially over Portmore, because it's really important. As you stated earlier, that the entire garbage collection, you don't know where so much garbage come from, and it's a reality. I've seen where persons, even in Portmore, the garbage is not collected, and they'll trash it in the gullies, which is not right. And I would love for that public campaign to come on stream. Also, I'd love to use a constituency that I represent as a pilot project in terms of this disposal of recycling as to solid waste, which is extremely important. There's a need for it, and as your entity, we need to promote it out there and implement it as best as possible. What if your entity will not collect the garbage if it's not separated? Can that be something that your entity look at? And I believe that in itself will assist in terms of our trust to rid our streets and communities from garbage.
All right, so separation of waste, we couldn't now just impose and say we're not collecting from you if you don't separate. We are a creature of law, and everything would have to be tested in court and all that. So I say that when the regulations are fully installed, then we can look at some of that. But the truth is, in the spirit of your question, we should have been there long ago. We should have been separating, especially in the urban spaces where we have, like your dormitory community that you spoke about. Portmore's peculiar, Member Miller, we need 15 trucks per day to do a good job in Portmore. Some days we are down to all 6 trucks. Now, what that means is that if I go in Monday with less than 15 trucks, I am leaving some of the garbage that I should take out Monday to come on the garbage for Tuesday. So I'm in trouble going into the end of the week. And that's just a fact right now. We try to juggle the best we can with what we have, and the people of Portmore have been very patient. They've been very understanding. We have had a lot of citizens meeting. We have gone to the municipal council there, and we have done walkthrough and so on. And we continue to keep the conversation going. It is a problem, but we have is not unique, and we take no comfort in trying to ask for cooperation every day. We don't like that. We would want to be there on time and doing an efficient service. But like the other rest of Jamaica, Mr. Negril, we just cannot do the impossible. We have to work with what we have, and I believe the team, I know the chairman didn't allow me, I hope I'm not charged, to big up the team that we have across the island. We are currently doing training with our sanitation workers. We will bring them into a room to talk to them about customer service, to talk to them about their own financial arrangements, to talk to them about, respect for each other, respect for the customers out there and so on. And we're trying to improve where we can and to do the best job we can, but try as we may, the resources that is needed, we just don't have enough of it. And until that time, Portmore will have a challenge, though you will see incremental improvement.
Yes.
Negril will have a challenge, though you will see incremental improvement, and so on. Again, I stress the importance of the public playing its part. There is a role for composting, there is a role for separation of plastic, and some of these things can be done on a large scale, especially in the rural areas. And we can't say how much we are prepared to come in and assist with that, because reduction of garbage should be the conversation, not adding more trucks.
So, Edie, I just wanted to ask, so you are in support of the notion of a levy being placed. Do you believe, because I did mention it earlier, a levy being placed on businesses for commercial waste would be the way to go, because you have been touting that there is a resource challenge?
What I'm in favor of is the regulations so that we can adequately do our work. Because once the regulations is in place, there is a lot of things that business people get away with now, as is private people, that they wouldn't get away with.
And in closing, I'd like to place on record that I've seen an improvement in terms of the collection of waste in Portmore and parts of my constituency. I've seen that improvement. Congratulations to your team on that. One thing I'll recommend as well is that we do not wait until the festive season or the summer season to do some debushing to beautify the area. So let us do it on an ongoing measure.
That's the most touted special project, sir, that only come when the funding is available.
All right, Member Charles has been waiting. Online, Member Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, members. Edie, I have been listening carefully. I'm looking forward to those trucks, and I want to say thank you to you for always returning my call and being so gracious when I'm very upset about the collection of garbage, as most of my colleagues are. My concern is the consistency in my constituency, the consistency of collection of garbage. And I also wanted to ask you about the embryonic stage that you're in now, planning. Is there a special plan for St. Thomas? As you know, we have new roads coming. We have an urban center. We are the new hottest spot in Jamaica. And I wanted to know, while you're doing their planning, if we're having a problem now with garbage, what's going to happen to us when we have new people coming in, new homes being built? Is there a special plan, or can you include a special plan for St. Thomas?
There's a special plan for St. Thomas, Member Charles, and it is long before even us appearing here at the PAC. We had bought lands, as you know, to remove the disposal site, and part of the removal of the disposal site, we had started to make sure that we don't just put another dump somewhere in St. Thomas, but we put a modern disposal facility. And so we would have done some preparatory work already in that regard. Lot will be seen as the report come out of the enterprise team, how things will unfold. But right now, I can tell you that St. Thomas was on our focus because the church corner facility has long expired. We are just kind of doing all sort of administrative and operational gymnastics to keep it going. But the plan was always to give you a new disposal facility out there. Part of the challenge is to get people to come over with the current road network that you have, to get people from town, like supplementary units, to come over. That's a problem. You have spoken rightfully about the new road that will come, and that will open up a lot of possibilities for a lot of other things, chief of which is our access for garbage trucks. So yes, St. Thomas is on our radar, and I'm sure that in time the improvement will be manifested.
All right, Member Holness, I also see you online. All right, let me come back. I'll come into you, Member Wilson and Member Guy. Edie, you spent a lot of time talking about the resource constraints that you have. But in the Auditor General's report on page 15 of the prompt, I'm going to read what she said in this regard. Although NSWMA has asserted that insufficient resources negatively impacted its waste management activities, NSWMA did not provide evidence that it conducted a comprehensive needs analysis to accurately quantify the gap between the resources it receives and what is required for effective solid waste management. So, yes, you're saying you want more, but the Auditor General is saying you haven't narrowed it down to say we need $10 here, $15 there, etc. Right. How you respond to that?
We fully appreciate the, I don't call it a rebuke, I call it the guidance from the Auditor General in that regard. We do have internally mechanisms for assessing needs. So we look at the population density, we look at movement. Just before coming here this morning, we got a letter from HAJ for a new community with 700 and odd houses that they're putting in. And we are guided by all those movement of personnel and movement of investment into different local. We look at the distance travel, we look at what, and we have a history that is guiding us also. We know what it takes to get, for example, the landfill covered in the River Town City. We know what it takes to prevent fire now. You notice when you do have fires now, they don't last for any time, that create a health nuisance for the city and all that. So we do have something in-house. What I think, I can't speak for the Auditor General, far be it from me, but I'm sure what I think the team was saying to us, that we need to do it a better way. There's a better way to do it, and we accept that.
All right, I have Member Wilson and Member Guy, and then the Auditor General to come in after.
Chairman, sorry I took such a long time putting up my hand, but just a small suggestion as it relates to some of our spruce up funding, beautification funding from TEF. Last Christmas, NSWMA assisted me with the design of some skips made out of metal and mesh with the base still concreted to allow for water runoff and preventing rot of the metal. They were very cost effective, and it improved the garbage collection along areas in the rural parts of the constituency. So I'm encouraging NSWMA to assist us again. We, for those of us who have beautification funds, would be able to execute implementing improved numbers of skips particularly in our rural spaces, with your support.
Thank you, Member Holness. Member Wilson.
So, Edie, going back, because I'm a big guy on the environment, so I wanted to know from a policy perspective whether there is a program that targets government entities. And the reason for that, as an MP, people look for signals, right? They want to know if you're serious about something. And as government to government, the first place and the first task would be to have a program across government agencies. And that will signal to the general population that, listen, we are moving in this direction. And the chain of thought comes along the lines of identifying our schools or police stations, government buildings, where we start the separation there first, right? As a policy, I think that's the direction that I would want to see the country moving in as it regards to our waste. So for all our government entities, all police, civil service, we would have a particular way of operating and collecting the garbage. And then that will not only signal, but people out there will see what's happening. Some will just come on board automatically. For my constituency, I'm trying something of that sort, and I'm trying it with plastic bottles, where I'm working with recycled partners to put up receptacles across certain key entities and areas. So like as it relates to a community, a large dormitory community, we would put up a site where a person would just deposit their plastic bottles and recycled partners will come and collect it. So my question to you is it being considered? Is it something being done? Because I'm not familiar with it, but is it something that will be considered where across, we start with government first, across all the entities we have such a program?
Right, so even on their own, a lot of school led by sometimes their principals, sometimes the parents-teacher association, sometimes a club within the school have been doing separation of plastic. You'll be amazed, a lot. And their recycling partner of Jamaica is working with them to my certain knowledge, and we have collected from several government entities where they separate their plastic bottles, and we collect it. Recycling partner collect also from there. So it is it a whole of government thing? Is it well publicized? No, but it is going
That's
on.
what I'm aiming at, a whole of government thing, because it cannot be, and I am aware, when I was going to school, we used to do it. That was back in the 90s. We used to do it. Now, I'm just looking for a more comprehensive approach across government, not just because the school is doing it. We have some very innovative and creative principals who do have a recycle program. They subscribe to the notion of a sustainable environment. However, we are not, and I'm not seeing where this is a systemic thing across all ministries and all agencies. And that is where my thinking is. And that's why I said, if you subscribe to this approach, or is it that you're just waiting for persons to do what they're doing and work with them, in more of an ad hoc way?
All right. So the general point, and the spirit of your conversation is taken that, we should see more people, not just in government, but private sector, come into the party when it comes on to separation, when it comes on to recycling. But it is happening. It is happening. Can we do better? I'm sure we can.
Member Guy?
Just, Chairman, Edie, you indicated that there's an enterprise team looking into the whole aspect of the future of the NSWMA in terms of the operational side. Has consideration been given to, and against the light of landfills becoming overfilled, then, that incinerators, incinerating garbage as one of the routes that are going to be, or is going to be pursued, waste to energy in terms of that? Because there are many countries in the world which do that, and which very good effect in terms of reduction in pollution from the burn garbage. Is it something that is contemplated? Is it something that is proposed? Is it something that you are going to give to the enterprise team to say this is one of the things that we're looking at as well?
Right. I heard a clip from the Prime Minister in this House speaking about the enterprise team and mentioning waste to energy as part of the whole outfit that is anticipated. So we couldn't even contemplate that with what we have working with. These things are expensive ventures that way outside of our scope, but the consideration is definitely on.
Madam Auditor General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that NSWMA has been on the Auditor General's Department's radar for quite some time. And we desisted from going in because we wanted to give the authority some time to settle down, considering the Act and the provisions as set out in the Act for regulation. So, set out in the regulations. Of course, we made a decision to go in based on the risk that we determined, but more so to the role that NSWMA plays in the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goal and the National Development Plan. And I'm just going to speak to 3 areas because Member Wilson mentioned something earlier in his comments, and I just want the members to know that the National Development Plan, in fact, contemplates those issues and actually assigned responsibility. So if you just bear with me, Chair, while I read through. So national outcome number 12, internationally competitive industry structures, tourism. Number 14, develop adequate infrastructure in communities and resort towns, improving the state of roads and creating additional facilities for sanitary conveniences, sewage, etc. And it allocates responsibility to resort boards, NEPA, NWA, NSWMA, and the Ministry of Transport, MTE. No, not Ministry of Transport, I'm sorry. Also, it speaks to developing a comprehensive strategy for improving sanitation and waste management in resort towns, and that is allocated to NSWMA. And it also speaks to develop waste management programs in establishments such as hotels, attraction, craft markets with respect to plastics, compostable materials, biodegradable materials, chemical and hazardous substances, and responsibilities allocated to NSWMA. Now, based on this audit, and the representation made here by the ED, which I believe the ED has represented himself well, and the authority, I have no doubt that NSWMA knows exactly what is needed to manage this. In some instances, as we have stated there, the information is not readily available, or it's not captured, and so we are of the view that the full extent of the resources needed is not known or it's not expressed. So whereas we could determine that there are shortages with trucks, in other areas we were not able to readily determine that. But coming back to something that was said again earlier by Member Wilson, the NSWMA developed a strategic business plan covering the period 2017 to 2021. And in fact, Chair, I think all the issues discussed here, save and except one, which is currently under investigation, I believe has been adequately addressed in the discussion. It's covered here in the report. And the NSWMA strategic business plan actually considers all those issues. So for example, the matter of e-waste, the strategic business plan says to improve the sustainability of NSWMA through public-private partnership strategies to collect e-waste from residential and commercial entities, assign designated collection units for e-waste collection, and identify purchaser for e-waste. It speaks about composting and plastic recycling projects, and it breaks it down as well, and it speaks to encouraging projects and programs geared towards reducing the quantity of waste generated. The issue that I have is that whereas I believe that all the necessary things that ought to be done is actually captured, has been considered, what we would seek to do as auditors is to determine what you have achieved so far. And for all these instances, the implementation could not be determined. So everything that needs to be contemplated based on our estimation, has been contemplated. All the issues and most of the questions asked, I think, are addressed here to show what NSWMA has done or has contemplated, but the actions is not so evident. And that too is exacerbated by the fact that the resource, the full gamut of resource required is not determined. And I'll speak to an issue that was asked by Member Miller about the enforcement, because that was an area that we looked at. And we were able to determine that between 2019 and 2021, actually 5,925 cleansing tickets were issued by NSWMA. We only looked at 110 tickets, and all but one of those tickets were paid for. However, I think 110 tickets, 107 was for urinating. We don't know which gender, but it was for urinating. We didn't see any... I won't take you on, yes. But we never saw any tickets in our sample really for littering. That's probably a bit more challenging, because if somebody's driving and throws a box, you have to drive behind the person. There are probably some more actions that would need to be taken there. But I really just wanted to add to the discussion, Chair, that all that is being discussed here, based on the evidence that we see at NSW, has been considered. It's just the implementation. And the matter of the regulations is a critical one. That's a significant component of the Act. And the regulations have, though submitted between 2013 and I think 2014 to the CPC, no action has been taken. So I can't fault NSWMA entirely for that. That is something I guess would have to be discussed with the CPC. But the regulations are needed to give life to the Act and to give power to NSWMA to actually carry out its regulating activities, which has a revenue component to it as well, that can assist the NSWMA in whatever funding constraints that they may currently experience, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. One second.
My co-worker is just reminding me to say something. The point of whole of government was made, and I just want to reinforce that this was actually a recommendation that we made, and I'll just read to you what we say in the report. The government should adopt a whole-of-government approach to solid waste management. Effective waste reduction strategy requires an integrated approach backed by legislation and policy to generate cooperation among public, private, and citizen stakeholders. This would facilitate a cultural shift in contributing to sustainable recycling and disposable system for improved solid waste management. And this is being said against the backdrop, Mr. Chairman, because one of the first findings that we have in the report is the poor coordination among implementing agencies. It's not just NSWMA. NSWMA has a responsibility under the Act to drive it, but there is a Ministry of Health and there are other agencies, NWA, that's involved in this process. But though the overarching legislation and policies exist and speak to it, we didn't see evidence of that kind of collaboration taking place. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
I want to draw your attention to issue number 9, which is on page 16 of the prompt. And I'm just going to read. Our audit identified an additional 166 checks with a value of 38.8 million, which were also lodged to the same third-party account. We noted that in all cases the checks were not endorsed by the payees. Therefore, we could not determine the basis on which the commercial bank honored the check deposit request by the third party. The third party is a contractor engaged by NSWMA but was not party to the related transactions. My first question, is this third party still a contractor engaged by the NSWMA? And do you have an update on, you said the matter is currently before the investigative arm of the police. Do you have any update on that matter?
All right, to your first question, Chair, the contractor is, to the best of my knowledge, that company that was referred to is not anymore in operation. But the contractor, one of the principal, is part of another company that still is at the NSWMA. Now, we have to be...
Just so I'm clear, so the individual who was part of that company doesn't exist anymore. But
I don't know if it exists. It doesn't exist on our books anymore. There's no relationship.
So you are not doing any more business with that company, but the individual is working with a different company.
In other words, Chairman Robinson is part of two companies. One company is no longer doing business with NSWMA, but the other company, which is a trucking company, still does business with NSWMA. Now, we have to be very careful, because if a company which otherwise is in good standing working for us, I don't know where we would get the right to just instruct our direct procurement not to procure a legal company thing. So we have to be careful. This is a matter under investigation. The investigation that we have not any update as of now from the police with regards to that. I know up to last week they called for more information. We are giving full cooperation to the police in this matter. That's all I can say from that end. We hope that they will work fast and efficient, and let us get to some conclusion in this matter.
All right, there are two sides to it. Obviously, the police is doing one side, but there must have been some administrative breakdown within NSWMA to allow this to happen. So I would anticipate that you would have done your own internal investigation to determine in your own processes and systems how this manifested. Have you done that, and what are your findings?
Certainly we would have to. I mean, you recall how this come about, you know. It came about by a whistleblower. Somebody would have communicated to us a concern in private.
Chair, Edie, could I ask you to just yield a little? Because this would also cover your answers. The chairman quoted from 415 of the Auditor General's report. 413 speaks to the... For example, we note in many instances where the operations manager performed multiple functions in the process of collating the projects, authorizing the purchase requisition, approving the purchase order, signing the engagement contract, certifying the works as completed satisfactorily, and signing the checks. Separation of these duties will make it difficult for individuals to manipulate the system. Further, a security feature on the NSWA checks to protect against fraud and forgery was removed by the operations manager and the accountant by the uncrossing of checks without evidence of a payer's approval, which made the checks payable to anyone. That is one of the things that I suspect the chairman is asked about, because in my mind also, has there been any corrective measures done to prevent this from happening in the future?
Thanks, member, and I would have in my answer go on there, definitely, because we would have been stupid if we didn't learn internally and adjust accordingly. What I would say to you is that we, long before the Auditor General report, we began tweaking in terms of the operations right across the island, how things are done. There are some reporting arrangements, some signing arrangements that were changed, and we are agency in transition. You fix as you go along. You develop a particular protocol, you realize after executing on it for a while that it needs strengthening, we strengthen. And with the Auditor General coming in and taking a deeper look, because our audit, our internal audit, which the Auditor General acknowledged, was for a very brief spot audit then. And they would have gone a little more extensive, and they would have seen that this thing was there's a wider thing than what we discovered. Fine. What I can tell you today, I can't give you guarantees because there's no 100% security, but it would be awfully difficult for this to be repeated based on what we're doing now.
Can I ask as well, the personnel who would have been involved, and this has nothing to do with a police investigation, has there been any administrative action taken in relation to those persons?
No.
You said no. Okay.
Sir Chair, I just wanted to caution the committee as to the questions that were asked, since it's on an investigation. You know, I want to be very careful, although we need the information, but I overheard that it's on an investigation, so be very careful of the questions that we ask, Sir Chair.
I remember I'll say there are two aspects to an investigation. There's a criminal, and I'm not seeking any information on that. No. But we have a responsibility here to probe in relation to processes related to the organization, and that's where I'm going. And it's along those lines that I've asked the questions.
Definitely, Sir Chair, but bear in mind also that it can influence the investigation as well.
Right. And I would get into serious trouble if I just take it upon my head as an executive director and begin to create sanctions on my own without regard to process and due process. Sir, I'm a justice of the peace also, so I understand only too well that irrespective of what we think and how our emotions react to situations, that we have to be mindful that we are dealing with individuals' lives and livelihood, and we have to be careful to allow the process to guide our actions.
And they can become tainted as well, so it's a,
right.
I would say you hold your judgment until there is some clarity on what's happening here. So, Chair, I wanted to go back to something that the AG mentioned, and it looks at actually generating revenue. Generating revenue. You know, we have seen where there's always talk about NSWMA, you know, needing more revenue to operate. But the waste to energy, I think one of my colleagues mentioned that, and I did mention the resale of e-waste and recycling and how valuable that could be to us as a country. And I posit to you, ED, that, you know, if we get this right, NSWMA won't be in any want of money, you know. And that is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but let's go back to the act. What was the intention? The intention was for us to be doing operation for a very short period. Why we are doing operation 20 years after? As a regulator, we can more than earn our keep through licensing, through regulating the solid waste industry. There's a lot of avenues there for revenue enhancing measures that can more than suffice. It's just that we are locked into this perennial operation thing which we can't afford.
So that means, ED, you're with me then that we are definitely looking at revitalizing or revamping NSWMA so it can be a profit-making entity.
That's not me, you know. That's the government stated policy. That's why the government have the enterprise team in place. It's a stated policy.
And that team that you mentioned earlier that is doing the strategic review, would that team have any part and parcel of advancing this agenda? Because I do recall you said the enterprise team, yeah.
The mandate given to the enterprise team, Member Wilson, is to divest the operations of the NSWMA. That's public knowledge. That's something all over the news. Prime Minister appointed the team with great fanfare at Jamaica House under the chairmanship of Littleton Tanny Shirley and Milverton Reynolds and a lot of people out of the Development Bank of Jamaica. They have all sorts of international consultants that came down, and they are, in a way, you're a little late because they are wrapping up their work now.
All right. Are there any other questions, members? In terms of the agenda, we didn't confirm the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, and I just asked the members if we could confirm them. We have minutes from September 13th, 2022, and we have minutes from May 24th, 2022. Could I have a motion for the confirmation? Member Clark and Member Wilson for both members, for both sets of minutes? Yes, thank you. On the AOB, our next meeting date is scheduled for October. I confirmed them. We got confirmation. Yeah, any matters arising from the minutes?
Thank you. There are two matters that I have here. One is towards the latter part of not the last meeting, the previous meeting.
Is this the May 24th?
Yes.
What page you're on?
I think it's on the final page. We were to have gotten some further comments from the AUGD, a report.
Sorry, Sir Chair, before matters arising. Sir Chair, the meeting of September 13th, I'd like to second that meeting since colleague Wilson was not present at that meeting.
He can second it, doesn't matter if he was present or not.
I'd love to.
All right, just for the minutes, for the record, so for the September 13th, member Miller will second that. But, all right, go on. Just point me to the page, member guy.
The paragraph before any other business at 9. We were to have gotten the chairman reiterated the members were concerned about the matters discussed and recommended the Auditor General provides a report to the PAC within a 3-month period on the issues which remain in view, as the PAC was interested in ensuring that these issues are resolved. And I just want to know whether that has been done, Chairman. And secondly, the other one as it relates to the validation of the waiver and its existence. I see a letter here which speaks to that. What is the other matter then?
So let me ask the Auditor General if you could provide an update on that.
I have the report before me for review, Mr. Chairman. I will review, and my intent is to send it for Tuesday. Are we meeting on Tuesday?
The next proposed date would be not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, which is the 11th of October.
Yes, I'll have it sent to you, Mr. Chairman.
On the second matter raised, there's a letter here from the Financial Secretary, which I'll read for the minutes, and it's addressed to me as the Chairman. Information requested by the PAC on May 24, 2022. Reference is made to the Public Accounts Committee request on May 24, 2002 regarding whether a waiver of the common external tariff had been granted to BFO1 for the period 2021 to 2022 and whether that waiver was still in existence. Please be advised that a waiver of the common external tariff was granted to BFO1, valid for the period February 17, 2021 through to February 14, 2022. That waiver is therefore no longer in existence. Sincerely, Ms. Darlene Morrison, Financial Secretary. So members, the proposed date of our next meeting is October 11th, 2 weeks from today, and we intend to have the Urban Development Corporation at that point in time. Let me thank the team from the Ministry of Local Government and the NSWMA, and also the Auditor General's Department and the Ministry of Finance for your responses to our queries. Could I have a motion for the adjournment? Member Wilson, seconded by Member Guy. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The meeting is adjourned.
Something is happening for someone in this country every single day as a result of the actions of this government. The beneficiary of this house